Hey, Gen X, I wanted to share this with you, my peers. Um, so I was going to post about this on Facebook, but I thought, boy, this would be a lot easier to explain verbally. So that's why I'm here making this video. It's about, let me first tell you about what brought it on. I saw in a group of local people, someone posted about something. And then, as is pretty typical in that group, a lot of people bounced on her, kind of trying to put her in her place, bullying her essentially. But there's so many of them that you forget they're actually just little bullies. But there's like a lot of them. So they start, saying, like, acting like what she said was stupid. It wasn't stupid. It was her perspective of an experience she's having. And really, she was just asking a question. She was asking about why the police were speeding through the road that she was on. And I guess she asked it in the wrong tone because a bunch of people got mad at her even questioning the police, which is insane in the first place. Like, what is our issue with questioning authority? Like, and if we're not the ones doing it, why do we have an issue with somebody else doing it? Someone's got to do it. So I kind of like it when authority is questioned, and when authority cannot be questioned, that makes me a little bit worried. When I look around at my peers and they're not willing to question things, I get a little worried. That's mob mentality. That's like, okay, where is the critical thinker in the group? We're all just going to be following what we're told. We're not going to question things. That's a little dangerous. So anyway, that's not the point of this. That is what brought this on. Because I was kind of thinking about it in terms of like, well, why is that? Like, because I personally, unlike that lady, would avoid posting something in that group because of that, because I've seen that behavior time and time and time again. And there's just kind of some personalities that love to pounce on people and make them feel stupid, or try to insinuate that they're stupid for questioning things, or because they just have a question in general, or because they disagree with something. And I was thinking about like why that's happening, and like, isn't that how that is just sort of weird that we're like being averse to questioning authority. And it's just like, to question that authority might shatter these people's reality, so they're not willing to do it. Okay, fair enough. It's scary for them. Got it. But do they realize that when they attack somebody for questioning it, that tells us a lot about them and who they are, and that they're afraid, that they're insecure, that they are in their reality in such a fragile state that they are angered by somebody who might shatter that reality that they're living in. And that tells us something about what's going on inside that person, and it's such antisocial behavior. But why? Like, what's the reason that we would want to turn against somebody for asking a question? Honestly, if we don't ask questions, we're never going to figure things out. So anyway, I thought of just sharing this. Gen X may or may not know that we are a generation that was brought up with punishment and reward parenting methods. There are probably some before us and some after us were also brought up with this. So if this applies to you, great. You might want to consider this. What we know about how our upbringing affects us is that we get programmed for our environment. This has been proven scientifically, something called epigenetics. I welcome you all to look into it. There are lots of videos on YouTube about it. I've been working with this understanding for many years, and I used to try to spread the word a lot about 10 years ago, but people didn't really want to hear it. So I just worked on myself quietly with this information, and I'll tell you what I found. It's true. We are programmed by our environment. And that means whatever our parents were doing, we're either going to be doing that same thing or we're going to be putting a lot of effort into not do that thing. Because our programming falls to our subconscious, so we're not consciously aware of what our programming is until we become aware of it, right? Usually how we become aware of it is it gets our attention because we notice that there's a pattern of behavior. Like, oh, whenever this happens, I always do that. And sometimes when you're around people, you'll notice that they have the traits of their siblings or their parents, and they might not even be aware of that if you were to point it out to them. Sometimes it's just the way they stand, the way they walk, the way they handle a certain situation. It can be very subtle and nuanced things, but there are clues if you are paying attention to see that this is the case. And since we know that's the case, this generation that was brought up with punishment and reward parenting has a certain trait. And this trait can be changed. I'm just going to point it out because if you have it and you're walking around with it, you're probably really miserable. And it can be changed. So you might want to look into changing it if you realize you have it. And a lot of us have it. And it's that since we do what our parents did, and since we were parented with punishment and reward parenting, what that means is our parents were looking at us to decide whether or not we should be punished or rewarded. All our behavior was looked at through the lens of punished or rewarded, punished or rewarded. Now, this was probably an improvement to what the generation before us was experiencing and what some of us also experience, which is corporal punishment. But at some point, we, as a people and a society, decided, oh, we can't just beat our kids. We should probably be nice to them sometimes, too. How about when they're good? I once talked to my sister about the punishment and reward parenting, and she said, oh, yeah. She said, except for our reward was just not getting punished. I was like, yeah, there weren't too many rewards. But basically, when you're parented in this way, what you're being is judged all the time by your parent. Like your parent is judging your behavior. Are you good? Should you be rewarded? Or are you punished? Were you bad? And since we are programmed by our environment and doing these things that we saw done, then we grow up into adulthood as adults who are scanning the environment and deciding who's good and who's bad. Who's good, who's bad. Should you be punished? Should you be rewarded? And then we verbalize it. And then we do it on the internet in public local groups. It's like weird when you put it in that context, right? I hope that it's pretty obvious, but if it's not obvious, I'll just explain a little bit of why that's weird. It's weird to think that you get to decide whether someone else should be able to question something, ask something, decide something, think of something a certain way. It should mean nothing to you that another adult who has nothing to do with you has an opinion that differs from you. It's okay for them to have a differing opinion. In fact, if we adopt the want to understand each other instead, we actually expand our consciousness. Our view gets bigger because now we know, oh, some people have had a different experience that allowed them to see it a different way. You see how the world just opened up a little bit? Instead of you fighting to keep it small and fighting to say that everybody else is wrong. And it does probably take a little bit of bravery for those who have been living that way and who have spent a lot of time justifying their stance, justifying their judgments, justifying their bullying, you know? And, excuse me, I would like to give everyone a free pass on anything of the past that you've, acted in the behavior, you've played out the pattern. It happens, right? We are going to repeat what we're programmed with. That's how we work. That's how humans work. It's been scientifically proven. We are downloaded with our environment. If you were punished and rewarded as a way to be parented, then you are likely carrying that program. And if you're not acting it out, you may be doing everything that you can to suppress or deny it. So it still has to be addressed within your energy body. Okay? So, do you know somebody who's been punishing and or rewarding people as they go through life? Are they doing it to you? Have you done it yourself? If you if you do, it would seem pretty normal given the environment that we grew up in. But now, here is an invitation for us to acknowledge it. It's valid in why you have it. Accept that this is where we're at. We're at a place where we need to change our behaviors because it's not effective to be a grown adult scanning the environment for whether or not somebody else is being good or bad. Like, don't you have better things to do with your time? Why aren't you growing your own self and enriching your own life instead of playing judge and jury to everybody else? Like, it's taking up a lot of your energy. It's a pattern. It's been in your subconscious, so you're not even aware of doing it. So it's time, and this is the invitation, to take that power back within yourself and redirect that energy by releasing yourself from the pattern. Once you accept that that's where you're at, that you need to release it, like, how do you feel? Do you feel shame for having done it? Do you feel shame for having been treated that way? Do you feel unloved? This is a huge one. This is why it's been avoided. This is why a lot of people will hear this and shrug it off and dismiss it, or know that they have the pattern and decide not to address it. Because it's painful. Because now when you address this pattern, being present with how it feels to be treated that way, to be treated like your parents just care about whether you've been good or bad. And that's it. And it's like you get alienated or hurt, like physically harmed or isolated, or you lose privileges or whatever your punishments were, if you are deemed bad. And that could have just been being curious. That could have been taking a risk that you had curiosity towards or about. It could have been anything that was very innocent. And our parents were coming off of a generation where they needed us to conform because their image mattered a lot. So if other people were judging them by the actions of their children, then that bothered them, and they felt a way about that. And so they started projecting it onto us and trying to control how we behaved. And they wanted us to behave a certain way. So they tried to entice us into doing that by rewarding us when we were doing it and punishing us when we weren't. So this is a cycle. It's been passed on, and it's time to stop it. But it does feel bad as a child to be treated that way by your parent. If your parent is only ever looking at you to decide if they should punish you or reward you, then they're not having a lot of time to get to know you. They're not having a lot of time to care about what you think or the reasons why you did something. You're just being given a bunch of hoops and told to jump through them, like you're some sort of circus clown or something. And that's not who you are. So when you process this through and have to be present with the feelings, they might be really uncomfortable. It might be sad. It might be lonely. It might be anger. It might be devastation. It might be longing. And when I say be present with those feelings, it's like presence is don't think about the past. Don't think about the future. You're no longer blaming anyone. You're not pushing it away or wishing it was different. You're just being brave enough to let the feeling be there. And as that feeling is there, it will eventually move out. Only if you've done those other steps that I said, right? You've understood yourself and why you have it. You know it's valid. You've acknowledged it, and you've accepted that you have it. So you're no longer resisting it. Because if you don't accept it first, it's never going to move. If you have resistance to it, meaning you just want it to move, it's not going to move. If you're only doing this to make it move, it's not going to move. You got to be present with it for the sake of being present with a feeling that is your feeling. That you are in charge of becoming the version of yourself that can feel it. That can be with it. You don't even have to say that you're feeling it. You can just be with it. You can observe it, However that works for you. Adapt this to what you need it to be. But I'm just simply explaining how to move this energy out of you. And when you do move the energy, by being present with the feeling, understanding yourself. It moves on its own, and now you don't have that compelled reaction to other people's behaviors. Now you've created space, and that is now filled up with compassion for yourself and others. Because you've been with your own feelings about it, you're no longer trying to project it onto others, so you're no longer going to call them out to try to make them feel it instead. Because that's all that's really been happening. When you are bullying someone else or judging someone else or insinuating that someone else isn't a moron for asking that question, it's simply because you didn't want to feel the feeling that you'd have to feel if you didn't project it. And it is normal to have this as something to need to process through from this generation. So let's look at it. Let's look at it right in the face. Let's just know that whatever actions that we're doing against other people, like, we don't have to act that way. We don't have to perpetuate this pattern. We can stop it. And the more of us that are brave, the more examples there are for other people to know it and to see it, you know? So that's my message and invitation to Gen X. Thanks for listening.